can you live out of your car and also drive for Uber and Lyft? This is a question I've been getting surprisingly a lot. I mean, a real lot, more than you would expect. And I think the reason why is for a lot of people, given the way the economy is working and everything, a lot of people are trying to figure out, okay, to cut down on costs, what if I live out of my car and continue working? What if I live out of my van or do van life and continue working? And one option as a job that a lot of people look at is Uber and Lyft. Can you do that? Short answer, yes. Long answer, I don't know if I've ever mentioned this on any video. I actually did that. In Boston, I lived out of my Prius, and I also drove for Uber and Lyft. So I will, in this video, talk about, one, just the logistics of doing it, but two, a lot of pro tips if you are planning on doing this. Of course, be safe, be responsible, but like I said, this is a question I've gotten more than I expected. I guess in some ways yes, in some ways no, because I know car living and van life and all that kind of stuff have gotten more popular for better or for worse, especially with the economy. But here's what I'm going to say. As one, yes, you can definitely do it. In general, I did it. So here are the best pro tips I have. Is one, make sure your car, I know it sounds very simple, is as clean as possible. I typically found that, let's say when I was driving for Lyft and Uber, while also living out of my Prius, I typically would wake up, let's say if I want to drive at 7 a.m., so I want to do the morning commuting hours, I would typically wake up, I'd say around 6:30, 6:40. What I do then is I look in my driver's seat, my passenger seat, the back row, make sure everything looked clean. Like I said, my blankets, my pillows, all that kind of stuff, I'd put it in the trunk, which I'll talk about a bit later in a second. Make sure everything just looks clean and spotless, right? Because remember, the first impression someone has of you as a driver and everything, is the way your car looks. And I find that, like I said, if you are living out of your car, you do want to make sure, if possible, that everything looks as clean and as nice as possible. Another huge pro tip I will give, which I feel like doesn't look as bad, is I find that when you're living out of your car, and some of this will be like half car living tips, half driving tips, if that makes sense, to have a trash bag in, like, say, the feet section of the floor of the passenger side, right? Or in the shotgun seat. I find that that's not uncommon, and especially if you are living out of your car, I find it's very easy for trash to pile up. So what I do is I'll have a trash bag there. Any trash that I have when I'm cleaning out my car before I start driving, I'll put right in there. Then, once I have that kind of stuff there, I'll usually leave the trash bag there. Unless it's full, of course, I'll throw it out, but I'll leave it there. That way, let's say if I'm driving, and I do happen to pick up 4 people, 3 in the back, 1 right there. If they see the trash bag, I'm like, hey, I just have trash here, just in case, let's say you guys have something to throw away or whatever. I feel like that's not that like weird or uncommon at all. So that's a huge pro tip I will give. The second one, and this was always the trickiest one for me, is trunk space. This can be a very tricky thing. Luckily, nothing bad ever happened with this. It could have, but luckily nothing bad ever happened with this. So here's what I did. Any single time I was actually getting ready to drive, I put everything in my trunk. I made sure that all my items, my clothes, the stuff that I had, just in general, anything I had that I was basically using to live out of my car, I put in the trunk, and I put a blanket over it. I will say, when it comes to Toyota Priuses, in case you don't know, the how do I word it? The trunk to like the back seats, there's like a gap, meaning I can look, or if you're sitting, I can look, and behind me, I can see the trunk, right? Most cars don't have this. Priuses do. So I feel like I was a little more observant to make sure my trunk did not look like I just had a bunch of stuff in it. But I typically would fill my trunk, put a blanket over it, and then shut it. So everything that I owned, I put in the trunk when I was driving. Now, let's say if I go to pick somebody up and they're heading to the airport. This is the only situation where it got a bit dicey. Because for the most part, living out of your car and driving through Uber Lyft, one, isn't that bad. I got to be honest. It is kind of weird because you're like, oh, this is both, in a sense, in that moment, your home, but also you're working out of your home, if that's the right way to word it, right? So you want to be careful. But I think, two, is you want to, I think, kind of keep it a bit more discreet. And I think the biggest issue with that is if, let's say, I go to pick somebody up and they want to go to the airport. This is what I would do. And I'm just being very honest, ultra transparent like I am in all my videos, is I would, and this is actually sometimes true, but, is I get out of my car, go to open the trunk, and I always have this like rehearsed, right? I'd be like, oh shoot, and I'd be like, oh, I'm sorry, I have my DJ equipment in the trunk. I'm also a DJ. I completely forgot to remove it. Is there any way you could sit in the back seat with your luggage? Every time the person was like, yeah, no big deal. Now, granted, one, I actually did have my DJ equipment in the trunk, so I wasn't lying. It wasn't a lie. But two, I never had multiple people head to the airport. I could easily see if, let's say, we have 3 people going to the airport, they all have their luggage with them, or even 4 people, and they all have their luggage with them, and they're going to the airport. I feel like it's rare. Like I said, I never once had that happen. Maybe I think one time I had 2 people, and they just put their luggage between them, and in the front seat, they didn't care at all. They're like, yeah, whatever, no big deal. Like, I don't care, So they don't, I feel like most people don't really care, but the only issue I find that I could potentially run into, being honest, is the fact of, like, say, 3 or 4 people got in, they have so much luggage that it can't fit in the car, and you have to put it in the trunk. That may be a tricky situation, right? So that's the only thing I will say that could be like a negative side effect, but that's just something to be aware of, that I kind of use that kind of trunk routine, if I call it that, every single time. The next thing I cannot suggest enough, have multiple phone chargers. I think this is true in general when driving, but let's say if you're living out of your car, charging your phone overnight is not an easy thing, right? Not saying it's impossible. I do suggest getting a portable phone charger, right? But it's a lot trickier. So what I suggest is typically a lot of times when I was driving, I'd always have my phone plugged in. Every single time, of course. My goal is to have my phone at almost 100% capacity as many times as possible. If someone did say, hey, do you have an extra charger? I need to charge my phone. I would have one of those, like, it's like a splitter that you plug it in to your car, and it has 2 different USB ports. So one USB port, the cord would go to my phone. For the other USB port, the cord would always be just kind of usually nothing connected to it, right? Because I just have it there just in case. That way, if someone wanted to charge their phone, mine would continue charging. Yes, I could always unplug mine, pass it back to the person, and then plug mine back in. But I find this happened a lot. I was like, you know what? I'm just going to get 2 cords, because making sure my phone is properly charged and I have enough battery life is pretty important, right? That's super, super important. This is also, I suggest, if you can, to get a portable phone charger. So I would typically do as well as have my phone plugged in with 1 cord. The second cord would actually be charging my portable phone charger. So I'd be charging both at the same time. That would, like, say, overnight when I'm sleeping in my car, and of course I don't really have access to electricity because I don't want to drain my car battery, I'd just be charging that portable, I'd have that portable phone charger to give my my phone some juice. And then, like, say, during the day, what I would typically do is after doing the morning commuting hours, it would kind of die off in terms of how much money I could really make. So I typically go to a Starbucks, get a coffee, do work on my computer, work on music, maybe work on YouTube videos or edit them. I'd also, of course, charge everything I owned, and then say go back out for the evening commutes, and then like the Friday and Saturday nights, all this kind of stuff. But in general, I will say, besides that, driving, I think, for Lyft and Uber, being an Uber driver and a Lyft driver, while also living out of your car, although I know this is a bit of like a touchy subject, because I know some people might say, oh my God, I cannot believe this is a video. I cannot even, which I understand, or I cannot even believe that this is the kind of thing that in this day and age that people are even asking or doing or considering. But I wanted to make a video about it because I feel like I always believe that if I get 1 or 2 comments, there's probably 10 or 20 other people who have the same question, but they just didn't comment it, right? And I've gotten more comments and more questions than you think about this. So like I said, way back when the beginning of the video, 1, yes, you can live out of your car and drive for Lyft and Uber. I think, honestly, if you had to ask me how hard or easy was it, it was surprisingly pretty easy. I will say, if I had to be honest though, I do think having, like, say, a desk job or going somewhere to work is, of course, way easier. You don't have to worry about the inside of your car because your home is also your kind of, I know it sounds weird, it's not that you're working from home, but like your home is also the thing that you're using to make money, which is driving people around. But I think the number 1 thing I'd suggest is just try to keep your car and the inside as clean as possible. So it might take a little more time. You may have to spend 10 or 15 minutes in the morning taking all your pillows, your blankets, any other items that you have, your backpacks, whatever. You may have to take that time to put in your trunk, clean up, and then continue driving, right? That was the only issue, but for the most part, I will say, that when it comes to driving and living out of your car and everything, it was pretty easy, pretty seamless. Although, I gotta be honest, I do think there are a lot of other better jobs that are easy to do this. Like I said, going to a site and actually working is a lot more feasible. But like say, for example, if you've been searching for another job, you can't find one, you can live out of your car, your van, or basically your vehicle itself and drive for Uber and Lyft.